This is Scott Talks. I'm Scott, and I am here with Tanya Sam, and completely out of my element. Just so you know, not really my element, but sort of at the core of who I am. I haven't been a reader, but I'm in a long-term relationship with an author. I'm reading a book right now. You'll be very proud of me. So each night I go to bed, I try to read a couple chapters, just because I've been an Audible, like, since everything's gone digital
But that
these
is
days.
reading. I never discount folks that like Audible.
I'm down.
I
I'm
am
down.
shocked by how many the numbers of people that tune in on Audible. So I never shame an Audible person. I go, reading is
I'm
reading,
not.
even if your eyes
I'm
aren't
very proud
moving.
of it.
Yep.
I'm down with it. But there is something to the old school reading that I think even people who say they aren't readers are very proud of when they read, right? Like, there's just something very personal about reading that I don't think you get from Audible. Like the pictures that you create in your head, the way you see the characters, and it's a unique perspective that I think is absent when you're listening to somebody tell it to you.
Tell
I've
a
also
story.
been a visual learner or experiencer. So YouTube is one of my favorite places to go and learn, listen, back and forth. But for you guys who don't know, Tanya is many things. She's the queen of book clubs. We're going to start there. How long were you on Real Housewives of Atlanta? How many?
I was on Real
seasons?
Housewives for about 3 years, 3 seasons.
Wow, 3 seasons.
Yeah.
You're Canadian.
Yep.
A beautiful Black woman.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. You also are into crypto and finance. You're into book clubs. You are a podcaster. You're a very busy person. You're an advocate. I really enjoyed your conversation with Laura. And let me just say one thing real quick, because book clubs are actually just really coming on my radar as Laura's book has gone into paperback. We've started exploring. I've got this unique experience in that I watch an author, conceptualize a book and draft it and then sell it. And then now it's a year old, and now we're seeing it go into paperback. So then now it's another life of the book that I hadn't. Yeah,
it's
that
another go hard time.
I had no idea. But one thing I thought was really interesting listening to you guys talk, because I was like, oh, what's the point of a book club, right? Like, I know they have a lot of good points, but just to watch the two of you, like, for any of the listeners who haven't listened to the show, go back and listen, because like I said, I think just sharing reading and sharing a book club allowed you guys to be like friendly in a way that you couldn't achieve any other way, right? Is that your experience?
Oh, I love that you said that and picked up on that, because, I will also tell you why I think book clubs are getting so popular right now. It's really hard to make friends when you're, air quotes, old. Like, where do you find friends after school, after the normal, like, I have my, your group of friends that you grew up with, then you go to work with, then you might know through your kids' school. And so it's like, it is difficult. And so this sort of drops away a lot of pretense of like, well, what are we supposed to talk about? And so it fuels this avenue and sort of opens doors to have like connection and conversation. And books are like a great way to do it. And so I think people are just and especially post-pandemic, people want friends. They want to be able to talk about things. And sometimes like you're stuck. I noticed like in the pandemic, like I was in my bubble.
Sure.
And
I think
it's
we all
hard
got there.
to find new bubbles, and books allow us to absolutely do that.
I agree. I think, and one of the things I think is cool is if you ask somebody if they've read a particular book and they have, you feel like you know something about them.
Oh yeah, it says something
by just sharing the book, which I just like I said, it just wasn't on my radar growing up. I've been an athlete, most of my life, so my goal has been to be tired enough, to work out enough to be tired at night. I don't read. Like I always say, reading puts me to sleep. And maybe that's true or not. I'm not sure. But being with Laura and being in this world, I am giving it more effort. And in fact, I'm going away next week, and I'm trying to figure out a book to take. So if you have a suggestion.
Take that one she said about what was it? The erotic stories from the.
Oh,
no, I'll be alone. I don't want to take that book.
I mean, this is also the thing. It's like, what do you like, right? And so
Yeah.
You have to meet people with where they are. And sometimes books will surprise you. I mean, that's where don't judge a book by its cover comes from. But
Yeah.
there's always a book for somebody. You like sports. I mean, what was Phil Knight's book? I heard that was excellent.
Okay.
I can't
I've
remember
heard that.
so there's always something where you can find something really great.
Yeah. Tell me, other than what we've just talked about, why are book clubs important? Why are they important now? Why do we need them?
It's something really interesting is happening because I do feel like book clubs have been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was in them as a kid, and there was sort of this idea that they were boring and it felt like pressure to be in them. Like, oh, I didn't finish the book and I didn't like our selection and I have to show up. And, people would talk about cramming a book in to finish it. And somehow this has gone away and people are actually finding enjoyment and pleasure from it. And I just think people are all about, our time is so precious now. Nobody wants to do things they don't want to do. And so it's created this place where people are around like-minded people, having great conversation and finding connection in a way that doesn't feel like you're at the old lady Tupperware convention.
I think that's the idea I carry around a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to.
Yeah. And so it's like, even in our book club, I'm like, it's lit. Like, and nobody has to come and be like, well, I feel like this reminds me of some hubris from Greek mythology. And like, this brings in like echoes of Foucault. Like, no. I love when people show up and teach us stuff like that. But I also want to talk about like, well, what do you think this person would look like if we cast them in a movie?
Right.
It's fun. There's no stupid questions. It's fun and it's engaging and like, come as you are.
So your last invitation just made me think, is this primarily a female thing or do you have a lot of men in your book club as well?
We're getting more and more men.
Okay.
Some of them are husbands. And
right.
because, and it's funny because I feel like that was also a Housewives thing. When I was on Housewives, I had a lot of men come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, you're Tanya. You were my favorite housewife. And they would be like, I'm forced to watch because of my partner, right? But they're in it, like men were in it. They knew the plot lines, they knew everything. And so we're getting more men and couples that are reading together as like an activity. And they're having
cool.
just as much input. Sometimes they're in the background going, say this part. So I really enjoy seeing that because we want diverse perspectives. Like we're reading, sometimes it's funny as women, we're talking and commenting and a man will chime in and be like, ladies, you got this all wrong. Men don't think like that. And so you're seeing more men. And I just think it's just exploding.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you said are true. We're trying to recreate community after this digital sort of time period that we've all been sucked into, we've been forced into. So even though it's a lot of it is digital, we're still, like you said, joining on a common piece of material and content to converse about.
So actually, I'm going to say something, Scott. I think that is like, you're piquing my interest here about how men, and I feel like there is something going on with men right now. Like y'all are getting a little bit more woke. You're all doing the work to like some of you are getting more in touch with your feelings. Like I feel like male focused book clubs would be really interesting. Like it's like step 2 to the barbershop. Like, how do we talk about these things, but in a safe space? Like I think you're onto something there.
Well, I like to think that we're now given permission to
there you go.
have those conversations, because I think many men have the side of them that hasn't been ushered into society as well, right? It's not like I don't like sports. I like surfing and cycling. Like I'm not a basketball. Somebody asked me the other day, do you like watching basketball on Sundays? I'm like, I hate it. Hate it, but it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate athleticism. So where does that go? Right. And but I think men are looking for a way to break that sort of, well, you're in a book club. What does that mean?
Ooh, I feel like you need to launch the Tanya Time co-ed book club mixer something.
Yeah. Well, I think and giving it the space to sort of like not be this linear thing for men where it's like, there's no, there, you know, they like a particular aspect of it, but they aren't allowed to sort of have feelings or, you
Yeah.
know, be emotional or, you know, be angry. You know, one of the other things I think that I wanted to say before this was over was that, first of all, I remember when Laura, I think when you DM Laura, thank you, about her book. And, you know, we keep bringing up American fiction, and I was struck by that because I had just done Laura's book tour with her.
Mm-hmm.
I was shooting photos and a lot of it, and um, you know, the book was written from a perspective that is not that's very unique.
Yes.
Race, uh, drug addiction, race, privilege, being a mother, and there, you know, as she's tried to sell the book, there wasn't a lot out there that like that. And the primary person that identified with it were these young white women who would, you know, hold
Mm-hmm.
their hearts as Laura would tell the story. And you are trying to change the narrative in Black literature and writing as well. Can you explain a little bit more of that real quick? Because you guys talk a lot about it in the interview, but if somebody wants to go back to understand what's going on, you would probably be a better person to explain it than I would.
So, what struck me so much again about once I started sort of on the other side, you know, I started this book club and then I was reaching out to publishers and trying to understand how the publishing industry worked. It is
Mm-hmm.
hard. And it's incredibly hard to even find an agent. It's archaic. You kind of have to search Twitter and find someone who's exactly looking for the type of book that they only want, and then there's nothing else.
Right.
So, you know, with a book like Laura's book, Stash, they'd be like, I've never seen a book like this, so I don't think there's a market for it, which is infuriating because
That
it's
is
my story
verbatim what we heard.
verbatim, and it
Yeah.
has to end like this. And well, if we need it, and especially it starts going into these little silos. Well, if it's Black, I'm only looking for Black, like BIPOC books that follow this theme. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's part of the problem. And we have this problem in technology too, right? With, you know, investing in this where,
Right.
you
Sure.
know, I'm just going to say it, it's the pale male that's at the top of the food chain and they only know what they know. So they were like, well, her story, nobody's going to want to read that. And that's sort of what this diversity of thought is cracking and trying to open up. And like once we get more people, because to be honest, I didn't even know I wanted to read Laura's story because I'd never heard Laura's story. I put it out there to my book club and people loved it because there's different elements to the, you know, 5 sort of paragraphs that you would hand in when you're trying to pitch a book. I'm a Black woman on opioids. I'm wealthy and this, and they're like, So this is what I think her book's a great example, and how as we break down what's happening in publishing that's run by like the 5 publishing houses, we can sort of
Right. The
crack
5 big
and show
publishers. Yeah.
people we're buying. And I think that's what I'd like to see, you know, and especially because Black women are buying up books, and books are expensive. Like I'm so excited that Stash is now out in paperback because it just means more people can read it. Like it's expensive.
Well, that's the way I feel too. I think what I understand now is more people will get a shot at it because it doesn't come, you know, fed to you by the top 5. It's you
Yep.
guys, you reading it with your group, sharing it with a bunch of other people, because of the story and not because of the perception of what the story should or shouldn't be, which is just mind blowing to me, I guess, as I learn more about how this whole thing works. And I really was thinking about your story when you were talking about being Canadian, being Black, not recognizing your race as an issue, loving Led Zeppelin. And I, you know, like that's a story I think that people wouldn't make a movie of, but I would love to see it. Right. I would
I
love to
feel
see
like it
that
would,
character, you know?
like I love looking back on life. And I mean, sure there were these ups and downs, but it's both sides. It's going to Ghana and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, you're white." And I'd be like, "What?" You know, we
Right.
literally have a word in Ga that it means, it's Obroni, and it means like you're white. And I'm like, "No, this is my motherland." You know, and then on the opposite side, I remember wearing my curly hair in the 80s and people would be like, "What you do? Stick your finger in a light socket?" I'm like, "I
Yeah.
am going to
Mm-hmm.
press the crap out of this hair so I can look like my soul, you know, my soul sisters are white too."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Being, you know, and sort of doing, and all of those things. I'll tell you another anecdotal funny story. I remember being on Housewives and we were like traveling somewhere and it was like through this horrifying storm, right? We're driving and we were like, we should pray. And I was like, guys, we should pray. And I prayed. Like my prayer was like, dear God, please help us to get here safe. And like all of a sudden I look up and the whole bus is dead silent. And they're like, that's how you pray? I grew up in a white church in Canada. It was like the United Church where you go to church for 1 hour and you get out.
United being the key word here.
You know, and they were like, that's how you pray. And I was like, oh God, there's another thing. Like, I don't pray right. I don't know. So it's just like, there's funny scenes in that movie if we want to make it.
Oh, I think it sounds really interesting to me. I would definitely enjoy watching that character navigate the world. Thank you so much for being on the show. And you guys check out the show notes. All of Tanya's. Let's see. We're gonna plug the book club. Tanya Time's First 50 is First 50 part of the name.
Tanya Time Book Club First 50 is
the podcast is called.
Bringing out all sorts of offerings.
And the podcast is called Money Moves.
Our podcast is called Money Moves.
And we hope that you make it to LA and we can hang out with you, or we'll bebop over to Atlanta. Not really on the schedule, but we'll try to figure something out.
You never know. Stranger things will happen, but let's do it. We'll have some books and tea. In fact, you know what? I'm always the type of person who'll be like, I have this thing called USSR and it's uninterrupted silent sustained reading. So maybe we could just like hang out, drink tea and read books together.
Yes.
No,
Parallel play.
Yeah. That would be a challenge.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thanks, Scott.